Good morning to all of our colleagues here in Istanbul, and good evening to our friends and colleagues in New Zealand. Kia ora. My name is Caner Yılmaz. I am one of the members of the New Zealand Turkish Business Council at DEİK, and also I am the Director of Business Development at Hitay Holdings. Unfortunately, today our chairman, Mr. Hitay, could not join the call because of a family emergency situation. He forwarded his best regards and his apologies to everyone. So I will be replacing him today in the call. Thanks again for joining the webinar. Her Excellency Wendy Hinton, the Ambassador of New Zealand to Turkey, it's always a great pleasure to have you with us during our events. And Her Excellency Ömür Ünsay, our newly appointed Ambassador to New Zealand. I would like to congratulate her again for her new position, and we wish her success. And we also have Ms. Catherine Baird, the Executive Director at Export NZ and Manufacturing NZ. It's always a great pleasure to have you in our webinars as well. And we will be also having Ms. Emine Feyhan Yashar, Vice Chairperson of Yashar Holdings. And we will be also having Mr. Dave Harrison, General Manager of Policy and Advocacy at Beef and Lamb, New Zealand Limited. And we also have Mr. Mark Casey, Fonterra Cooperative General Manager, Trade Strategy and Stakeholder Affairs. And we will also have Mr. Grant Jackson, General Manager of Milk Supply at Miraka. Distinguished members of the Turkish New Zealand Business Council, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you again to our first webinar in 2021. After conducting 2 successful events online in 2020, we continue to organize new events in order to bring New Zealand and Turkey closer in the international trade arena. We see that organizing our events online has been successful based on the feedback we have received so far. We have reached almost 100 attendees in our last webinar in 2020, which clearly shows the interest to do more business and investment between 2 countries. In our previous webinars, we have highlighted the importance of the food and dairy industries and their increasing strategic position in the world during the pandemic. Food security is now on the agenda of every government in the world. New Zealand is a great example how a country can combine agriculture, farming, and industry in a great mix for the economy and export markets. And as Turkey, we need to follow the footsteps of New Zealand in order to increase the output and efficiency. As most of you might also know, New Zealand is one of the major countries in the world in terms of dairy and meat products. There are more than 100 companies with exports to more than 140 countries in the food business. The success highly depends on the country's cooperative structures, which root back to 1870s. Cooperatives like Fonterra, who will be also in our call today, have established world-class standards in terms of partnership, organization, sales, and production. And today, that company has gathered more than 10,000 dairy producers under one roof. The success also shows itself with facts and figures, as 65% of the dairy exports are conducted by New Zealand companies in the world. USA is the #1 market for the New Zealand meat products, and while China is the #1 market for New Zealand dairy products. Same concept is also replicated in other industries such as meat. There is a strong ecosystem around the animal farms supporting the local producers with ongoing education and R&D. The locally developed Kiwi Cross cows have been a great success for the country after these R&D developments. Investing in the agricultural technologies definitely created competitive advantage. With know-how from New Zealand, especially on the back of more extensive use of technology, we can cooperate with New Zealand companies in order to aim for large-scale animal breeding and cooperative-based organizations for higher and more effective production capabilities. This will also lead to increasing our food security with ability to absorb shocks like financial volatilities and pandemic. Well, as I conclude my opening speech, I thank you once again for attending, and I would like to give the floor to Ms. Wendy Hinton for her opening speech. The floor is yours, Ms. Hinton. You are on mute, Ms. Ambassador.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, we have a pretty unuser-friendly system here. Good morning, Morena and Gonaiden, or in New Zealand actually it's good evening, so we have to cover all possibilities here. I thought I'd start with a small sort of quote from the Maori language, which I've used in other instances here, which is, with your food basket and my food basket, the people will thrive. No te roro, naku te roro, ka ora ai te iwi. And I've even used that on letters to the Foreign Minister. So I think it's appropriate to keep the theme going. So good morning, Mr. Chairman, friends from New Zealand, friends from DEİK, and everybody else who has joined the session today. First of all, thanks to the DEİK Turkey New Zealand Business Council, with whom we have co-organised this webinar. It's a third in a series, as the chair has said. The first was on cooperative business opportunities between Turkey and New Zealand in the post-COVID era, and the second brought together Turkish and New Zealand businesses in key sectors. This session will tackle the big topic of sustainable agriculture. As you know, globally we face twin challenges. The food system is inefficient. 1 in every 9 people in the world today does not have enough food to maintain a healthy and active life. And the FAO estimates that 1/3 of all food produced for human consumption is wasted every year. That is at a huge cost, $1 trillion annually. Secondly, we're all experiencing the extreme impact of climate change all over the world, from New Zealand to Turkey and everywhere in between. These two challenges are interrelated. Due to increasing demand based on population and income growth and dietary change, the contribution of agriculture to climate change is rising. But agriculture, more than most sectors, will bear the brunt of a changing climate, further threatening our food security. New Zealand is only too well aware of the challenges. Over recent decades, New Zealand has had one of the world's highest rates of agricultural land intensification. This increased production has brought with it environmental costs. What we are increasingly seeing is that agriculture is part of the challenge, but can also be part of a sustainable solution. Farming has the potential to provide lasting solutions to food security, climate and water and environmental issues. For instance, combining supply-side actions such as efficient production, transport and processing with demand-side interventions such as reduction of food loss and waste both reduces emissions and enhances resilience. While no country has all the answers, both New Zealand and Turkey are making investments in developing sustainable practices, boosting production and responding to a changing world. We are proud of the gains that we have made, and innovators like Fonterra and Miraka are at the forefront of this work. Most farmers in New Zealand are now receiving unique emissions reports which provide the estimated biological methane and nitrous oxide emissions per hectare. This information helps farmers understand their emissions and the solutions available to them. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for joining us and showing us what business and government can do to address these challenges. This is an opportunity to share, to learn, and to inspire. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the opening speech, Ms. Hinton. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Ömür Ünsay for her opening speech. The floor is yours, Ms. Ambassador.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ambassador. First of all, thanks again. Do you hear me? Okay, thanks again for hosting me. It's a great honor for me to be the next ambassador to New Zealand. I received the good news last month, and my next home was very welcoming. They were fast in accepting me, as their new ambassador from Turkey. I will travel on the 11th of March, and I'll be there on the 12th. As to the rule, we have 2 weeks of quarantine. After that 2 weeks, I'll fully be on my work and in the office. I'll deal with all these topics, but now today I'm just a listener. I'll learn the problems or opportunities. As far as I've read and I've listened, there is a great potential between the two countries in this sector. I'm still learning, but my first impression is that we have encountered some problems in export and import area, but there's a great potential for investments and R&D opportunities. So we could use these technological projects and the developments on both sides to come up with new investments and with new projects. Ambassador Hinton already told us that there is this area, there's this hope for us to cooperate in technology and R&D, but we have to find the exact matches from both countries. Other than that, I would like to thank the Business Council, of course, for their hard work during this Corona pandemic time. And it's difficult to have face-to-face meetings. I know that in bureaucracy, there are some challenges to come together to meet the counterparts, but I will advise these kinds of webinars and online contacts when I start my work over there. Hopefully we will continue like this. As soon as the conditions avail, we will have some visits that I learned from my contacts here in Ankara. But until that time, I will try to do my best to join these kinds of webinars and video conferences. Now I would like to say that I'm open and ready to help. And you can join, you can contact me via email too. I'll be available until my official starting date. I can send you my email address for all participants here. Thanks again for this opportunity, and glad to meet you all, although it's online, and have a good night over there in New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Unsay, for your opening remarks. I also wish you success with your new position, and I'm sure cooperation between two countries will continue during your term of office as well. Now, in our webinar today, we have 2 sessions. In the first session, we will have a number of guests from Turkey and New Zealand, and each participant will have an opening remark or a speech or presentation, followed by a Q&A session at the end. Now I would like to start with our first session, which is named Future of Agricultural Trade and Food Security. And as I have said in the beginning of our webinar, we have Ms. Catherine Baird here now from Export NZ and Manufacturing NZ. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Catherine Baird for her speech and presentation.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here again. We've had some really good webinars with Turkey, and we do appreciate your efforts in putting these together. So I'm just going to share my screen and run through a few slides. There we go. It's that one there. Okay, that looks to be the one. Right, I will just get rid of my face. Okay, so the future of agri-trade and food security. So this is going to be a fairly quick presentation, because I appreciate that these things can be, the shorter the better when you're online. So just very quickly about New Zealand, we are on the other side of the world, as you know. We're the first country to see the sunrise. We're a similar size to the United Kingdom, but we have a very small population, 5 million. Very temperate climate. We only have 5 million people here, but we can grow enough food to feed 40 million people. So obviously a lot of our food is exported. We're earthquake prone like Turkey, so we have to find solutions to that, and those are things that we can share. We have 80% renewable energy, including geothermal, hydro and wind. And this is going to be very important for us as part of our contribution to reducing emissions for climate change purposes. 46% of our goods and services exports are food and beverage, but we're not just food and beverage, we're also branching out into high-tech digital film capability. So what we grow and export on the food side of things, we have, well, we're the largest exporter in the world of dairy products and lamb. We're a major exporter of beef, kiwi fruit, apples and seafood. So you can see those categories there. Increasingly important too, and a growing sector, is processed food. So within these sectors, we have a wide range of emerging growth products with strong exports, and you can see a big range of products there. So it's not all just commodity products. We're doing all sorts of things, from nutraceuticals to you know, soft drinks, craft beers, pet food, cherries. There's quite a range. So what are the things that help us to be successful? Well, obviously the environment is very suited to agriculture. It's very temperate. We have good rainfall, good sunshine. And actually, because we're surrounded by a lot of ocean, it does mean that global warming, while it's going to impact all of us, it impacts you less as a growing country if you've got lots of water around you. Our farmers are highly productive and efficient. We have no subsidies, and our regulation is generally rational and light-handed. We are a trusted leader in food safety and product traceability, and that's really important. So we have a lot of research and development investment going into agriculture in New Zealand. We spend more than $500 million a year on agri-food research across a wide range of areas, from fruit to genetics to nutraceuticals. And we've got 4 major globally respected universities, as well as a whole lot of government investment, and those are the brands there. And just to give you an idea, we actually are one of the biggest, one of our variety of apples is the most grown apple in the United States, and that we have actually exported the intellectual property for that. So that's the variety. So what are our opportunities going forward? As I mentioned before, we're actually a very big country, the size of Italy, with a population the size of Sydney. However, if you look at Italy, they feed a domestic population of 60 million people and export twice as much food and beverage as we do in New Zealand. So potentially, if we can manage environmental impacts, we have a lot of opportunity. We're still a young country discovering our comparative advantages, and in the past 20 years, wine, honey, aquaculture and avocados have all emerged from almost nothing to world-leading sectors. We have attracted investment in food and beverage from around the world, manufacturing, and about 25% of our F&B is foreign owned, and we welcome investment and investors to participate. So sustainability is the big challenge for everybody, particularly in the face of global challenges. So on the climate change front, New Zealand has legislated for getting to net zero emissions by 2050. That's going to be a huge task for us, and agriculture will be part of the effort. There's a current consultation document out that suggests and it's all still up for input by industry, but that agricultural animal numbers may actually need to shrink by about 15% by that time. We do have a sustainable fishing system. We were one of the first in the world to introduce fishing quota, and that's tradable rights to fish, and it makes sure that the amount that people can fish is not overfishing and it's sustainable. We have a local government network in New Zealand. They are all looking at their local areas and setting budgets for how much farmers can actually, put fertilizers and things like that on their farms. They're limiting that because they don't want it running off into lakes and rivers. So some farmers in some areas are having to actually destock already. So water allocation, water storage and protecting waterways and wetlands is increasingly coming to the fore. And you'll probably hear more about that from the other speakers. Biodiversity is very much very important. Afforestation is happening, and we have an emissions trading scheme which is encouraging trees to be planted for carbon credits, and animal welfare is a big focus. Now, I was going to talk a little bit about the traceability and give an example of what Beef and Lamb is doing, but I think I heard Beef and Lamb are actually going to be on this webinar, so I might leave that to them to explain. Don't want to steal.
I wasn't going to talk about it though, Catherine.
I'll just flick through that, and that's me really. So I'll leave Beef and Lamb to do the talk about what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Whisper. It was a very informative presentation, and I was very impressed with the $245 million of honey exports, I think thanks to Monuka, which is really, really nice. And also, just like New Zealand, Turkey is also a big geothermal market, which also I have seen in the presentation. And thank you very much. It was great to hear the export and manufacturing capabilities of the businesses in New Zealand.
Thank you.
Now, our next speaker will be Mr. Grant Jackson from the Miraka. As far as I understand from their corporate website, it's a Maori-owned business. And they have interesting business going on there, and they have also set strong values such as sustainability, and also I think it is called Kaitia Kitanga in Maori language. Sorry if I have mispronounced it, which is I'm sure a key theme in the food security. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Grant Jackson, and we will be more than happy to hear about Miraka.
Kia ora, kia ora.
Kia ora.
So firstly, thank you very much for the invitation. We're very happy to always introduce our kaupapa around, which is our origins. So quite rightly, like you said, Miraka is 80% iwi owned, or Māori owned. We started up about 10 years ago, so we're in our 11th season of operation. And one of the reasons why we started up was we had our Māori stakeholders at a lot of land holdings that had large geothermal pools. And so we saw an opportunity to not only create a value chain business that had a very low carbon footprint by using geothermal steam for its dairy pasteurization, but also using geothermal power as its main energy source, but also being driven by our Indigenous or Māori or Mātauranga Māori values. So a lot of those values underpin a whole wider New Zealand culture around our food supply chain. But having worked in non-Māori organisations, our particular organisation drives the stewardship of our resources, like you referred to before as kaitiakitanga. So almost good pronunciation there, so well done. So kaitiakitanga is right at the forefront of a lot of the commercial decisions that we make. So what we did about 6 years ago was put those values right at the forefront of the way we're doing our business. We knew that there was a large requirement for social license, that our consumers wanted validation of, shall we call, a light footprint on its food origins. So we developed a quality assurance scheme called Te Ara Miraka, which is the Miraka way. By the way, Miraka is the Māori word for milk. So the Milky Way, I guess you could refer it to. So we set up this quality assurance scheme, and we linked the adoption of sustainable on-farm practices to the milk price that we actually pay for our milk. So there are the typical drivers around composition and milk quality and food safety standards, but we also then overlay it with a proportion of the milk price that our farmers receive based on their treatment of their environment, their treatment of their people within their employment, the animal well-being standards, and also their milk quality and food safety standards as well. And so all of this is audited annually by an independent organisation that's ISO accredited. And then it basically, that along with a motivation about recognising excellence too, really drives a real behaviour change. And in the 7 years that we've been running our quality assurance scheme, and there are plenty other New Zealand dairy processors that have already adopted similar quality assurance schemes to drive behaviour change, but also many of them are about to adopt it just in the next season, so it'll become basically an industry normal. We've seen huge behaviour change. We've seen, for example, in the first year, we had about 10% of our farmers were recycling all their plastic waste on farm. Last year, we had 84% of our farms were recycling all their plastic waste on farm and being able to validate it through proof of receipt, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that we found very quickly is businesses, and this is the core of a lot of Māori beliefs, is that businesses are all about people, and you can't drive excellence in food safety standards, in environmental well-being and animal well-being, unless you have engagement from the people in the supply chain. So one of the first things we did was try and improve. We already had pretty good employment relations in New Zealand, but we wanted to improve it again. And we wanted the staff, right down to our staff putting cups on cows, to moving travelling irrigators, to driving tractors, to buy into the why, the idea of the value behind the New Zealand dairy products, around what they were producing on farm, the quality of the food they're producing. And we felt that if there was aroha or love in the production of the food, there'll be aroha and love in the quality of the food, and therefore, better quality tasting and better integrity of product to the other end for the consumer. So we challenge our farmers to change the way that, they roster time on, and we incentivize them to do performance discussions on a regular basis with their staff, to give them extra time on leave, all those sort of things, and to invest in training them, which of course has the double impact of they're also being upskilled to understand about, the well-being of the stock that they're handling, how to judge when stock are healthy and when not, and under adverse stress, and also to improve their understanding of the impacts they have on milk quality standards. So, and then exactly, and a great introduction by Catherine. there is a much a bigger awareness at the moment in New Zealand around the requirement for not just actually maintaining freshwater standards, but actually restoring them. So maintaining our productivity and our prosperity of our primary sector, but also restoring the quality of not only the air, but also the fresh water, which is already, almost second to none globally, but we actually want to restore it back to a level almost pre-industrial. And that's the challenge for us as a nation. So, we have got a big emphasis on building biodiversity on farm, and about, so already 100% of all the waterways going for all our farms has been fenced off and stock-proof. And well over 50% of our farms have got riparian plantings and generally native plantings to enhance biodiversity and establish a better, filtering of nutrients going into the waterways. So, it's been a really big focus and a large investment from our farmers for the last 10 years.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jackson, for the information. And I'm sure we will also have some more questions in the Q&A session as well about these issues. Thanks again for joining the webinar today, sir.
Namihi. No worries.
Thank you. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Emine Feyhan Yashar. She's the Vice Chairperson of Yashar Holdings. In Turkey, their company is the owner of the Pınar brand, which is one of the really good top brands in milk, dairies, meat and water markets. And in Turkey, we have generations of people growing with Pınar milk and dairies, just like myself. I am also from Izmir, just like the Yashar Holdings. So in our hometown, it's the brand for us. Now, the floor is yours, Ms. Yashar, and thank you also for attending the webinar today as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the very interesting presentations and views. I'm delighted to be part of this DEİK's webinar. As you know, Turkey is a very important country in agriculture, and agriculture development is one of the most powerful tools to extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and we have to feed around 10 billion people by 2020. So it cannot be just a local issue, it is a global issue. There is a very important imbalance between the supply and demand of agriculture. As all we know, sustainability issues, climate changes, use of water resources, waste of food products, everything which have been discussed here is one of the most important threats for extreme hunger and poverty. Even today, it's a very big problem. And this is so, as the producers, we have to not think local production or local trade, but we have to think much more the future of the business, future of the trade, future of the very important problem for the world. As you know, this pandemic and other disasters have made important problems in people to reaching to food, which is very, I think, which is very important, the food availability, access to food, use of the food, stability, because the earning money income is getting down and people are unemployed, so cannot reach to buy food. It's very important for the young generation and for the other future of the world. So this is a very important issue we are discussing today, not only on the trade side, but also in the production side, and also keeping the scarce resources in the future. In my opinion, as Yashar, we think that technology is very important in battling with this problem because it can increase food security. Improvements in technology have increased the amount of food available. Technology can overcome temperature, water, nutrition deficiencies in form of greenhouses, irrigation, and fertilizers. And around the world, by 2050, we need to produce 70% more food, while agriculture share of the global GDP is shrunk only by 3%. So that means that the technology which is used today and in the future, technology available to the farmers will make the use of the resources much better than, so we can at least battle with the combat with the existing problems and the future for the agriculture. Like sensors, devices, machines, information technology, also continuously educating the farmers and using robots, moisture sensors, GPS technologies would make our production more effective, more sustainable. Environmental changes posed by agriculture are huge. There will be, every country has its own problem, but in our mind, as Yashar, we think that local farming, local production should be much more sustained so that we can provide good quantity of raw materials in order to continue the food production. Also, we think that water resources should be used to the maximum, so making small dams and other types of water conserving ideas work in this prospect. And I want to come to Turkey a little bit in this part. As you know, Turkey is located between Europe and Asia. It's a large and sustainable agriculture sector, fertile soil. Turkey is one of the main producers of agriculture products and one of the few self-sufficient countries in the world. In terms of agriculture production, especially production of food items, Turkey is also one of the richest and largest in terms of land. We use these advantages during the pandemic. In the pandemic, the continued production and delivered products to consumers without any interruption. And this is a positive trade balance between agriculture and food sector and contributes significant relief to the overall trade deficit. And Turkey is among the top 10 countries in terms of agriculture income and shows great performance. Turkey's fertile soil, adequate climate, rich habitat is helping us to continue in this, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to take a lot of precautions. We have to take a lot of precautions for the future. Rapid industrialization caused agriculture shares to decline in overall income, and then these living standards of farmers have decreased, but today's agriculture employment has only 20% share in the total employment. This is also very important to increase the share of employment in agriculture sector for Turkey's infrastructure and young population and a big land, and with all the aspects and different diversity of all foods we have able to produce because of the climate available, and a lot of rain is possible, snow and rain. And the ministry is working with a lot of projects for the self-sufficiency, and we have some strategic products which we have value-added products. And the collaboration of agriculture with food sector is also very important. We can create brands together with New Zealand and other countries in order to increase this potential of both countries. As many knows, the cereals, pulses, industrial crops, sugar, nuts, fresh and dry foods, vegetable, olive oil, and livestock products is very important in Turkey's agriculture numbers. So I think what is important is the soil productivity, water efficiency. Also, we have to put the digitalization in agriculture, smart agriculture, and a stable supply chain. Better traceability is, I think we have to work on that. And strategies to fight against climate change is important also. We believe in regional development programs. We believe in development of logistic infrastructure because some of the food is wasted during the logistic transformation. This is also very important. As a country, we value value-added products to increase our income in exports to produce more value-added. So this can be made through brands and more intensive products. Integration of global value chain, I think, is one of the most important issue also. Collaboration, we always, as Yashar, we believe in collaboration. And also we support agriculture entrepreneurship, creating inclusive groups that will empower small agriculture and food producers. In this part, Turkey is doing great in the last 2-3 days. Organic farming and local production of food is on the market. So this is a very important, small but very energetic way to grow food production. And digitalization, we think it's very important. It will improve e-commerce, mobile commerce, traceability, food security, shorten the supply chain, and reducing the intermediaries, which would make the cost of food, stability of income to reach people to the food would be much lower. And also the waste will be lower. You will buy on what you need mostly. So in Turkey, agriculture is very important in the agenda of the government and also in our agenda. We entered this sector in 1970s with milk, and then we developed to livestock, and we are also in the feed, fish farms, we have water plants. So we covered beverages with all of the chain of the food. So we have 7,000, 8,000 people working in the sector, and also with the collaborators, with the farmers, we are a huge community. Also, we have very potential competitors in the sector. So Turkey is from 1970s have moved today to this position. And as Yashar Holding, we believe that nature is our raw material. Our food and agriculture companies, as I said, Pınar Dairy, Pınar Meat, Çamlı Feed, and also the fish farms. We have organic milk farm. We serve Turkey and Turkish consumer the best quality, quantity, best price, and sustainable products. But of course, the future is integrating technology, local people, and also in the distribution of income. It will help the growth, support the growth of Turkish economy. And I think this is what is about the end of my speech. I'm very happy to meet you all, and thank you for all your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yashar, for your very informative opening remarks. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Dave Harrison, of Beef and Lamb New Zealand Limited. First of all, I want to say that I really love your organization's motto, by farmers for farmers. I think which is definitely making things easy for farmers. And I'm sure we can learn the best practices from you, especially in the beef market. Now the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. Well, we try to do our best by our farmers, but like everywhere in the world, we have to work within what we have. So, look, thank you for the opportunity to talk today, and I guess one of the things listening to the presentations that have come before that I would like to talk about would be a bit of a story from the New Zealand sheep and beef sector. And so back in the 1970s, early 1980s, in the sheep and beef sector, our government wanted us to produce more lambs. And so we were paid money to have more lambs, and for everyone you had, you had a specific payment. And then in 1985, that stopped. And when that stopped, we were driven to a different sort of practice. We were driven to, okay, our government's not going to support us. We need to think about what the marketplace wants. And so the good thing, well, it was a difficult thing for our producers, absolutely. But what it has brought us to, which has put us in a good place to look into the future, is that you can only sell what somebody wants to buy. And if the government is trying to get you to produce something that people don't want to buy, it isn't going to work. And what we have found in the years since 1985 through to now is that we have reduced the number of sheep that we have from 70 million to it's now about 18 million sheep, or 18 million slaughtered, probably 25 million on the ground. But the amount of production we've lost is a fraction of that, because we weren't being incentivized to have things on the land just for the sake of having things on the land. We are focused on producing something that the market wants. And when we think about that in terms of food security, and when we think about that in terms of climate change, that's been a huge amount of a reduction in terms of the global footprint of every little bit of meat you get from New Zealand. And so we've been able to reduce our, despite dropping from 70 million to 25, let's say, we are producing basically the same amount of meat, because we are doing the right things in terms of genetics. We're doing the right things in terms of managing our pastures. We're doing the right things in terms of animal health and making sure that worms and parasites, frankly, aren't eating all the gains that come from eating the pasture. So there is a huge opportunity there when we think about food security, to just be improving efficiency, to be improving animal health, and to be across the world, really, to be looking at what you can produce from individual animals and individual mouthfuls of food, because feed equals greenhouse gases, essentially, and it's very hard to break that cycle. To be able to produce a more sustainable global food economy. Okay, so that exchange of information, that exchange of R&D around pastures, that exchange of information around parasite management is for us really important in terms of thinking about what the global response should be to climate change, right? So that's been a really important story for us, and I think to put it into the modern context now, to put it into where we are sitting as a sector within New Zealand, is that, look, we've made a lot of gains there, but we need to continue to do things. And probably what I see, there is these wins here we can do in terms of profitability, but what I see as a real challenge for, certainly in New Zealand, and it may be not felt in the rest of the world yet, is that productive land could be taken over by forestry to offset engine emissions. And that's not good for food security for the world if your productive land is being put into trees that will absorb carbon rather than produce food so that people can keep driving cars. So for me, that's probably one of the most significant issues that New Zealand is facing, but that potentially I think is a big one for more broadly as well too. We'll be kind of weaning people off the freedom and the opportunity that came with having your own car or your own motorcycle, and making your world smaller as a way of preserving land to feed 10 billion people. So I think, you know, I think kind of that dynamic shift, particularly maybe it's more so in New Zealand than it is in Turkey, and I'll be quite keen to hear about that. But kind of that shift towards recognizing that food is more important than having a car is probably the biggest challenge that we have as an agricultural sector. And that's probably all I was going to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mark Casey from Fonterra company. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I'll just try and share my screen and apologise in advance for children screaming in the background. They will be at daycare soon, thank goodness. Right. Let's try and show that there. Could I just ask, can everyone see my screen? Is that working okay? Take that as a yes. So thank you to DEİK and the Turkish Business Council for hosting this webinar today, and also thanks to my fellow panelists with all those really interesting comments. And to your excellencies, also great to hear the really positive comments you also shared earlier. Ambassador Hinton around saying agriculture is part of that sustainable solution. Really do agree with that sentiment. And Ambassador Usno with the potential for investments and R&D opportunities, I'm really buoyed to hear those kind of comments too. That really goes to the heart of what we see as the opportunities for New Zealand dairy and the Turkish market. So my name is Mark Casey. I'm the General Manager for Trade Strategy at Fonterra. And I'm based up here in Amsterdam. So seeing Grant with his outdoor twilight scene behind him, it makes me rather homesick, but kia ora, Grant, it was great to hear from you. So Fonterra at a glance, we are a New Zealand dairy cooperative. We were formed in year 2000. We're owned by just under 10,000 farmers who supply us their wonderful grass-fed milk, which we then turn into a wide range of ingredients, food service products that end up in restaurants and hospitality, and consumer products to the shelf. As has been touched on, we are a major exporter, and we export 95% of our production to around 130 markets globally. So this next slide here, which I hope you can all see, this just gives a bit of a context of where New Zealand sits in the world and New Zealand dairy. So you'll see there, this is a graph of milk production. So although New Zealand appears quite low down that chart with around 20 million metric tons of dairy production, we export, as I've mentioned, most of that across the world, whereas those other larger countries, most of their production is internalised. You'll see our good friends there, Turkey, next to us on production, but as I mentioned, most Turkish agriculture makes itself into the domestic market only. So Turkey for us is a really great partner, a really great market for us. We see it especially as a great future partner for our specialist IP and our skills and our innovative products. We really have looked to the way that Fonterra is looking to partner overseas in its markets these days is that nutritional play as consumer preferences are really starting to change and seek more tailored solutions. Okay, so yeah, today I think talking about the challenges around food security and what that means, especially in the agriculture system. So this slide here, we've already touched on what food security looks like, and it paints quite a dire picture really. Around 700 million people undernourished in 2019, and COVID-19 only compounding that, another up to 130 million people expected to be added to it. And obviously nutrition and nutritional content of products play a huge part in feeding the world, which I think is important when you consider the trade-off between agricultural systems and the need to actually get those nutritional products out to the markets to overcome those challenges. So on this slide, I've tried to set out what I see as the risks and the challenges in our agriculture and our food systems and in hitting that food security issue. It may seem counterintuitive to have some opportunities next to it, but I think most companies, or all companies, would see these challenges and want to turn them into opportunities. That's how good businesses work, and Fonterra is no exception to that. We see a lot of these challenges as ways for us to really take a coordinated approach with our competitors in a way of making it a positive change. And we're always looking to the future with the innovation, with the R&D, which of course leads to positive changes in the way that we farm and the way that we produce. So look, today I'm just going to run through a few of these very quickly and then focus more on the climate change side of things, because I think that is really, as many of you have touched on, that is a really burning issue right now. I'll quickly talk about trade tensions, and Dave's story around the lambs really hits the nail on the head. We see that the way that some markets impose trade barriers or internal subsidies really leads to can lead to inefficient ways in which production of food is carried out. And so yeah, that was a great example. Thanks for that, Dave. For us, you know, being a global exporter to 130 markets, it's difficult to get into those markets when there are prohibitive tariffs imposed, when there's a lot of red tape that's really not based on anything with scientific evidence. And really, it's the shame of it is that we can't get that nutritional product into markets where they may be wanting to protect the domestic industry, and we get that, but to the point where it actually prevents products that actually have a real value and a real worthwhile complementary aspect to them and propping up the food systems within those markets. The second item there, the industry disruptions, and the most obvious one there, the COVID-19, you know, really live example of when when industry disruptions can affect food systems. I think they're actually a bit of a positive story in terms of the resilience, especially of dairy during COVID-19. We still managed to feed the world. The challenge there really was having the agility to switch from out-of-home eating to in-home eating. And so again, a lot of a coordinated approach across supply chains to get that production into that different area, keep ships going, keep ports operating with all the restrictions on. And we're still seeing those challenges now. It hasn't been easy, but it does show that with those kind of disruptions, trade and the easy ability to trade across the globe becomes even more important. And look, before I get into climate change, I thought I'd touch on the new foods at the bottom there, because it's become quite a topic we've heard a bit about lately. My wife the other night was talking about Bill Gates's new book around climate change and asking me about synthetic proteins. So I thought if she puts me on the spot, makes me feel awkward, no doubt someone on this call may do that later. So I'll preemptively approach that. But I think the key message there is that, look, you know, in 2030, there's going to be another 2 billion mouths to feed. So the fact that there's new foods coming up and these synthetic proteins, these alternate proteins, is a good thing for the world. And look, our farmers, you know, New Zealand dairy farmers, they're smart and savvy businessmen and women, and they know this too, and they want us to get up to ride that wave too and look into that, because that is something that we see dairy and agriculture and meat, you know, beef and lamb, we are going to complement those foods. It's not just going to be one or other or either, it's going to be both, because the world is such a diverse place, consumer preferences are so diverse, and so we see that as a side-by-side in time. Right, I'll move on to, before I get to climate change, I did have a couple of slides. You know, how do we solve these challenges? There's no easy solution. Ms. Fahan, you talked about digitalisation, for example. Great, I think digitalisation is one part of the puzzle, but it's not going to fix all. I'm not suggesting you said that, but digitalisation for us is one way in which we see food security being improved, but it's not the only way. There's got to be improved trade relationships. It's got to be a coordinated approach to tackling climate change. And especially with food systems, obviously the well-functioning markets, which are safe and trustworthy when they go out to market. So just about Fonterra and our strategy and how this fits in, before I get into a bit more about the way we farm and the way we produce. But Fonterra reset its strategy in 2019, and we've really moved our focus to these three pillars: innovation, sustainability, and efficiency, and they all really do work together. But sustainability is at the core of what we do, and I think sustainability is becoming much more of a focus for many companies and governments across the world. You see that in the EU with the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. It's a ticket to the game now. It's not just a conversation, and so that's really at the core of what we do. But that innovation and efficiency really prop up and support what we do sustainably. So our innovation in getting pediatric, sports and active, medical and aging, nutrition, we're really trying to tailor our product, our really unique New Zealand dairy product, to get it to the right nutritional blend. That efficiency, again, we're trying to unlock that value from our efficient farming methods, the way that we farm and the way that we can get our product to the world. We've had to be efficient, being, as you can see, we've put New Zealand at the centre there, which is great. But most people see us on a globe at the far right corner of the world. We are far away, but we have those efficient networks to get our product to all the right markets at the right time. And then these are the goals that underlie our that are underneath that strategy. And that healthy environment is a key focus. But I think, as Grant mentioned, and I really like the way Grant put it with the aroha for the people. Okay, I totally agree with that. Healthy people lead to having the enthusiasm for that healthy environment and that ability to create a healthy business. You need that healthy business to have the resources available to put that investment into that environment and into those people. So again, all three of these elements are interconnected. So I talked about the coordinated approach. So Fonterra, there's the Dairy Sustainability Framework, which has a number of entities involved. Sorry, it's a bit of a noisy slide, so I'll get through it rather quickly. But we also have our own independently prepared sustainability report. So we firmly believe that what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So we like to assess ourselves independently, rate ourselves, see where there's room for improvement, and go forth and do our best to achieve that. So talking about climate change and the things we're doing, look, to be honest, we're such a large company with such a diverse range of areas within our business, and we are doing literally hundreds of things to try and lift our sustainability game. So really, I'm just going to focus on a few of those areas. So New Zealand farming is lucky in the way that we are low carbon. Our cows are outside on pasture almost all year round, grazing on young, fresh soils, farmed by farmers who have over 100 years of really, really great farming practice experience. And that efficiency means that we've got one of the lowest carbon footprints on the planet. But we don't rest on our laurels there. We want to improve. We look at game-changing solutions to try and improve our greenhouse gas footprint, because we acknowledge that agricultural systems do have that impact on the environment. So we want to do more. So some interesting ones off the top of my head. We've got a product called Kombucha. which is a digestive additive to try and reduce methane. We're in a partnership with DSM, a Dutch company, for another synthetic dietary methane inhibitor, taking seaweed from our neighbours across the Tasman in Australia, so that again in a cow's diet can reduce methane. So again, it's this innovation, this R&D to try and again improve our environmental footprint. Our production and our manufacturing also working towards zero emissions. We want to be net zero by 2050 and reduce 30% by 2030. We took some big steps last year when we took a couple of coal boilers out of commission and replaced them with sustainable wood mass. And that was the equivalent to taking around 32,000 cars off the road. So a really positive story for us. And then finally, the products, the carbon zero products, our sustainable products, we're really trying to minimise waste and find out innovative ways to reduce the carbon footprint of our variety of goods. On farm again, I think it's a really good story that our farmers they want to create an environment that is good for generations to come. They don't. They're not on the defensive, they're not digging their heels, and they want to move forward. They want to do what's right for the land, that katiakikanga. That's a massive part of the way we farm. And so we support that. We try to give as much support as we can using technology. On screen now, you can see an example of our on-farm environmental reports, where we give farmers an overlay of their nitrogen, for example, their nitrogen profile on farm, where they're doing well, where they can improve. We give them a greenhouse gas emission report, again, so farmers can see what they're doing and what they might be able to improve on. And that's really well received. Similar to Miraka, we have that concept of, we call it the cooperative difference, where we now build it into the milk price that we pay farmers, where people have really gone above and beyond in their sustainable practices. And like Grant with his comments around Miraka, we have seen that huge behavioural change, and that's great to see. So look, I'll finish it there with the cover from our sustainability report with a cow about to, or maybe already have given that little girl a lick on the face. Yeah, beautiful shot there, and those words there, tātou, tātou, that's Māori for you, me, and us together. I think it's a good way to end, that we see this challenge of food security and agricultural systems and moving them forward as a coordinated approach between the farmers and us who work for them in the cooperative, and between us and our customers, looking for those nutritional profiles in the best markets for them, and with other governments and markets and other industry players as we look to those sustainable actions, that innovation and R&D, and sharing that with the world to make sure that we can make agricultural systems part of that sustainable solution. So thanks very much. Look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the wonderful presentation. And it's also great to see how Fonterra combined almost 10,000 farmers under one roof. And I think it's a great example showing how a cooperative can be successful and become a global brand. And thank you again for the presentation. And also last year, during one of our webinars, our core chairman of the Business Council has also invited dairy and meat companies to invest in Turkey, including Fonterra or other companies as well. And hopefully in 2021, we will see some international interest in the Turkish market as well. Thank you again for your presentation. Now, as we have finished up the first session, and now I would like to move to the second session, which is a Q&A, including our participants, and also we will be taking questions from the attendees as well. We will try to make this session interactive as much as possible. For our attendees, please feel free to submit your questions and we will go over them. during our Q&A. And I have also prepared some questions for our speakers. And I will be asking one question for each of our speakers. And in the meanwhile, I will also check if there's any question from the Q&A panel in the Zoom. Okay, I would like to start with Catherine Bear. Catherine, during the pandemic, how did the food security concerns affect the policymakers and private sector's motivation for exports in the food industry?
Thank you. Great question. I think there was definitely, it was a big unknown at the start of COVID-19. Nobody knew how well our supply chains would operate. And things were a little bit difficult at the start, particularly as China was, I guess, the first to sort of lock down. And so we get a lot of imports from China as well. So that affected some of our food producers in terms of maybe even packaging or labeling and things like that. But I think there was remarkable resilience shown from our food exporters and our logistics providers in the background. And they all worked extremely hard to keep the food moving across the border. And it was deemed an essential service by the government. So the food sector was allowed to continue to operate while the rest of the economy got shut down. So the government definitely prioritised food, and I think other governments around the world obviously wanted to keep their supermarket shelves stocked as well. So I think everywhere there was a real focus on we have to expedite food going across borders. So it actually worked a lot better than we would have thought, and I think it's a great credit to all our farmers and our food manufacturers, our logistics people, and of course other governments for keeping those, the access open and keeping the customs, people processing those goods. So it went pretty well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. My next question will be to Mr. Grant Jackson. As you also mentioned in your presentation, America is very focused on key concerns such as sustainability, integrity, innovation, and diversity. In the pandemic, how did you react, or how you've been responding to the increasing consumer demand for food traceability?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. It's not an area of my responsibility in the business, but I do know that we adhere to the full food safety standards requirements stipulated by our Ministry of Primary Industries and all our trade requirements. But yeah, you've got me a curly one there, because it's not part of the supply chain that I'm responsible for. Sorry, but
sorry for, I thought about like a general question, but yeah, sorry.
I think Grant's right though. The MPI and the traceability that we had, I think Mirak would have been the same. We had good lines of communication throughout the pandemic, which really helped in that regard. So that was a real positive outcome of COVID-19 at those communication channels, and Grant, probably the same for you guys, between our companies and MPI was a real positive.
If I can add to that, I think we had discussions with our government here in New Zealand about how to manage that, and so within a meat chain, people will be standing close to each other, right? And so to be able to keep the chain flowing, then you need to have a separation there for COVID separation, but you also need to have some logic in terms of the supply of how the carcasses move around. And so we had to work hard with our government in terms of how to maintain that degree of separation that was going to ensure that the product was safe, while at the same time making it functional, you know. And we got to the point where plants were, they were operating like when it was the worst in New Zealand, they were operating at about 50% for sheep, because for sheep you need to be a bit closer together than you do for cattle beasts. And for cattle beasts was about 75%. So yeah, so it was all about respecting segregation and negotiating around really what the science said and how you make that work.
Yeah, one thing I would add is in a dairy supply chain, it's highly automated. There aren't a lot of employment required. From the time that milk is transferred from the udder of the cow right through till it's sitting in a package, a consumer package, there can be sometimes as little as 12 actual humans involved in that whole process. So it's all very automated. So it's very easy to maintain really strict social distancing through that and maintain the same processes, risk management procedures all the way through that supply chain, so that we can maintain the same food safety standards that, for example, if there was any form of contamination, we could take it right back to the original farm that it came from before it even left any warehousing. So all of those standards were not impacted at all by the pandemic.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I will be also getting some questions from our attendees, and I will be going through them at the end of our Q&A session. My next question would be to Ms. Emine Feyhan Yashar. As one of the strong consumer brands in Turkey, what was your group's message to the consumer about the food security during these challenging times, during the pandemic? And also in your speech, you mentioned about the agricultural technologies. If you can also elaborate how you cooperate with the communities regarding R&D and technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Since 2007, we are very much keen on sustainability. We have signed the Global Compact through the group, not only in the agriculture, but also in our other businesses. It's very critical for us, and we communicate this to our consumers and also other shareholders in the farmers and packaging industry. It's all supply chain is very much involved with that. This sustainable approach is very important for a better life, caring better for our customers, human resources, society, business partners, and the value chain. We have done some projects with the farmers, especially in the places where the milk output had problems in quality, quantity, and other animal health, where we have an institute which works non-profit to train those people in order to increase and this also is a message for our belief in the future of this business, in the technology also, as well as the education and the training part of the farmers. For example, Pınar Dairy and Meat were among the 7,000 volunteer companies that respond to CDP platform for climate change, and we got B score on that. We are also focusing on greenhouse gas, water usages, and decreasing all types of waste. And our next plan is target for decreasing plastic usage. This is all our communication to our customers, our producers, our farmers. So we think we must offer a sustainable future as a food and agriculture business for the future generations. And our slogan in Yashar Group is we walk in unity and we search success together. And we use science. So Bilim Birlik Başarı is our main strategic line on that. So hopefully it's not a one company, one country job. As I said in the beginning, it's a global issue which we have to work on this. It is everybody has to take its part, whether developing, underdeveloped, because at the end there's hunger, there's a threat for the future generations and very much injustice in the world. So I think even the customers, human resources, and everybody is being trained and focused on the main topic. This is how I approach to this issue.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Yashar, for the detailed informative feedback. My next question will be to Mr. Dave Harrison. Maybe if you could elaborate how COVID and food security related best practices in New Zealand, especially in their effects to farmers and also consumers during the pandemic. And also globally we see ecosystem is getting damaged because of global warming and those type of things. And how do you see the transformation of meat production in this sense?
Two big questions, and but the first one I can probably say fairly quickly is that New Zealand has been very lucky around COVID. And so the impact of COVID to New Zealand has, it has not been like the rest of the world, because I do have people on the ground in Europe and London. I understand, you know, that yeah, but it hasn't been the same here. I have to say that. So yeah, so I'm going to step aside from that question, and I'm going to go to the other question. And the other question, I guess, look, in terms of how, meat can play a role through this, and it does come down to, like, if I look at, like, New Zealand, we can feed 40 to 60 million people, depending on how you think, right? Which is never going to solve world hunger. Not at all. But at the same time, what we can produce will be, will feed a portion of the world, right? And if we don't do it, it will turn into forestry, or it will turn into other things. And so, yeah. So, look, I do think that. I think that one of the things that gets missed in terms of when we think about certainly climate change is that, you know, like New Zealand is at risk of climate change as much as anyone else is, because what it can mean is a change in the type of diseases that move around the country, because you'll have different climates, and all of a sudden you'll have to deal with different things, you know. And so New Zealand is at risk of climate change as anyone else, and so we need to make as much of an effort as other people to try and mitigate it. Not sure that answers your question, but.
No worries, but it was still good informative, and well, thanks again for your reply. My next question will be to Mark Casey of Fonterra. How does a big organization like Fonterra manage to move all the farms and farmers in sync to react against shocks? And also, maybe if there are a couple of things that you would like to mention about how you are promoting sustainable agricultural technologies, which is also one of the major issues in the food industry as well.
Okay, so how do we coordinate our farmers and sync to shocks? Well, I think COVID-19 again has given us the perfect example of how we managed to coordinate that approach. Fonterra actually has a wide network of farm source stores, which also provide farm support, and a lot of farmers get their communications through that channel. And these are really, you know, they're people who live in the communities with our farmers. They're friends. They all get on well together. They're rural communities, and so we take a great care through those channels to get the right messaging to our farmers. It helps that you also have tanker drivers every day turning up on farm, delivering the message, having the chat, letting them know what's going on if there is that shock, and that certainly was helpful in COVID-19 as well. So, and look, during COVID-19, all our farmers were on board. We're all on the waka, as they say in New Zealand, on the same canoe, in terms of trying to keep that product, keep the farms operating, keep that product flowing to feed the world. So it was a great example of those communication channels throughout the cooperative working really well. So how are we promoting our sustainable agri technologies? So Catherine touched on a number of companies within New Zealand that are going leaps and bounds in that agricultural research, and a lot of them are also on the international stage, promoting what they are doing internationally as well. Fonterra is taking that messaging to the markets, both through our involvement in the Dairy Sustainability Framework, which I mentioned, the Global Dairy Platform, the Sustainability Advisory Initiative, all those great collaborations with industry players where we share our ideas. You know, those networks are really important, not only in promoting, but for us for learning as well, and taking that back to our business and figuring out how we can achieve those more sustainable outcomes. I will also say that the way we communicate that to our customers and consumers is through also a targeted approach and putting forward what we're doing and allowing our customers to actually use that commercially to say, okay, this is a way that Fonterra is low carbon dairying, and it tells a story about New Zealand provenance. And I think that's really important because, like I said, if you've got that healthy business that is propping up the actions you're taking in the environment, you're only going to want to improve if it has that commercial outcome as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. Now we all a couple of questions from our audience, and also I would like to thank our audience for listening to these wonderful interactive speeches and presentations. Now I have the first question here from Ms. Elif Damla Arısan. She is asking, in the New Zealand success criteria, the traceable products were one of the items. Sorry. What kind of options can be followed to prevent hidden hunger? I think we also have touched base about it in a little bit in Mark's maybe presentation, but maybe Mark, if you want to add anything to your previous remarks about preventing the hidden hunger, maybe it will be great to hear.
Yeah, so the traceability is a massive part of, as I mentioned, you know, there has to be that trust in food products. As soon as your food safety and quality, if that falls away, everything else crumbles, basically. You need that trust to remain. So traceability is a massive thing for Fonterra, as it is for every nutrition company. And so we have invested a lot of technology in making sure that our food is traceable throughout the world to prevent food fraud, for one thing. And food fraud is a real issue. And so we again invest a lot of time and resource in ensuring that our products and the right products, the right nutrition, especially in those markets where there is prevalent hunger, those are the at-risk markets, and we spend a lot of time working with overseas governments and agencies to try and prevent that. And our traceability is a huge part of that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have two questions actually from one of our attendees. It's from Vedit Kamiloğlu, and actually the first question is to Fonterra. he is asking, how does Fonterra see Turkish market at the moment? Is the butter price in Turkey become attractive for Fonterra again?
Gosh, lucky I had my coffee this morning. So yeah, the Turkish butter market, recently the pricing in Turkey has diverged away from the global butter price, as it has with a lot of our markets. So historically, it has been a strong market for our butter, and we're always looking to whether that arbitrage can happen again. But for us, Turkey is more of a bigger opportunity for our proteins and our nutritional products. But the only issue we have there at the moment is there are high tariffs for those proteins coming to Turkey, which makes it makes it much more difficult for us to get those products in there and really work hand in hand with customers in Turkey. But that really is our focus at the moment, is that nutritional, that functional nutrition, the sports and active, the infant formula, the pediatrics, and the medical and aging. So that's really where we see Fonterra and Turkey working together in the future. Again, some tariff limitations there, but we're looking to work around those.
Sure. And also you have mentioned about the protein products, and that also is addressed in his second question. And he's actually asking to Ms. Emine Feyhan Yashar, he's asking from Pınar's perspective, do you see opportunities around Fonterra's protein products?
Because this trade is a very dynamic issue, and it is, I believe in free trade, but the prices are made in the market, and it's very dynamic. So in order to make me to comment, I have to be into day-to-day this trade business. So in the future, I think we will have always collaboration. It can be in finished products, raw materials, or producing in Turkey, or livestock. I believe there's a big opportunities for everything. But on day-to-day business, I'm not very updated about this to answer something to you about this issue, because trade is open trade is very important, and Turkey is importer, exporter of butter sometimes, and also we have output of milk is increasing also in Turkey. Of course, Turkey is a big important market for New Zealand, and also for us, New Zealand is a very important partner in the livestock and other areas. So I think that in the future there might be very important relations between two countries in order to solve the food security, sustainability, climate change, and other issues we have been discussing this morning. And all this would mostly I want to look to a longer perspective than a very short perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have another question from Riyaz Ulhalik from Ankara, the Anadolu News Agency. He's asking, can you specify the areas where Turkey and New Zealand are collaborating to enhance trade? And since the two countries are geographically far away, how are you navigating this distance to allow you to boost the trade? Maybe I would like to forward this question to Ms. Catherine Baird, because of her expertise in the export NZN manufacturing NZN. She can elaborate how New Zealand actually addresses this geographical issue and uses as a big advantage for its own products. The floor is yours, Catherine.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Great question. And I suspect that the NZ Turkey chairperson, Robin Galloway, would be better at answering this than me, but I do have a couple of examples, and maybe the others from the New Zealand side can add to them. But I understand that we are exporting raw wool to Turkey. Turkey is getting it made into carpet, and we're re-importing the carpet to sell in New Zealand. That's a great collaboration. We have a lot of beautiful wool, but we need to get it manufactured somewhere where it can still be affordable back for New Zealand consumers to make the price competitive. Turkey's very good at making carpet, so that's a fantastic collaboration. I think there's probably plenty of others. I'm sure that there's cooperation and collaboration, and Ambassador Hinton would know more about this, but geothermal, we both have geothermal energy and we both have earthquakes. So I'm sure that we're cooperating in a research sense on those issues and sharing knowledge and expertise. But if anyone's got any other good examples on the New Zealand side, please jump in.
Thank you. Maybe Ambassador Hinton, if you have any comments or remarks based on your years of experience in
Catherine's wool.
Yeah, well, I mean, Catherine's covered some of the more interesting ones, but my colleague here was just mentioning the fact that we have a trade in sheep intestines with Turkey, which means that I think a large percentage of the one of the favorite Turkish delicacies is actually based on New Zealand sheep intestines, and actually some of them also I think the best quality ones are then re-exported from Turkey to other countries in the region. So that was a curious one that came our way recently. Also, there's quite a lot of collaboration in some sort of high-tech areas, including communications, you know, from some of our companies which do sort of specialized equipment. Jaren, any others?
Hamilton Jet.
Oh, Hamilton Jet, that's right. Their engines are and other items. Are sought after here. So we have the sort of the market spectrum from agricultural products to sort of high technology products, and we're hoping to increase interest in you know, two-way trade because it is quite low, and we would like to do a lot more with it, and we think more can be done.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I got two last questions from our audience, and after that I'll be wrapping today's webinar, hopefully. I got one question from Mr. Hussein Demir. He says, after COVID-19, what is your expectation about changing on a consumer taste and preferences, especially demands for plant-based products? Maybe Ms. Emine Feyan Yashar might reply to this one about the changing consumer taste and preferences on based what you have seen in the Turkish market.
In my opinion, the most important problem in the COVID pandemic time was the availability and to reach the food when there was a quite important lockdown in Turkey. So digitalization, e-commerce was very important. Mainly the content of the food did not change, but since away from home places were closed, mostly the consumption went to the houses. So the trade was mainly growing inside the houses and declining outside the house. Another question which I understand, I read also the question, in the future, yes, with the technology, we will have plant-based foods mostly growing for protein intake of the world. This is not because maybe mainly of pandemic, but because of the sustainability issues and other issues in 2050, when you look for the future, plant-based protein would rise in the demand of the consumers. The problem is also the logistics when we increase the trade between New Zealand and Turkey, it's a quite important logistic way. And because of the sustainability, logistics is becoming an important barrier in front of the trade also. There should be a very positive way to solve this problem, because there is no way sea transportation is not available, as I understand. So it's very important that we have to find different ways, and this is to work together in Turkey or to work together in New Zealand as partners and shareholders to grow the future business with the countries will be in the agenda in the future. I think then trade would diminish, collaborations, partnerships, and solving problems together and working together, bringing capital, human resource, technology, R&D, and all the vision together and work together in the countries. This would be the future solving this transportation logistic issues. I think trade would diminish, but collaborations will increase in the near future in agriculture, fisheries, and other businesses which we are talking about. This is my expectation and vision. Of course, livestock is very important for New Zealand, also important for our country. There will be also some efficiency increases in the use of livestock. As you mentioned, the animal health is very important, and the productivity is important. The cost of feed is very high in Turkey. This means that we have to grow our own raw material in order to compete with the world prices, and other issues are on Turkey's agenda and will continue to tackle in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Yashar, for your answer. And we have the last question from Deniz Dinçsoy. The question is, okay, we wonder if New Zealand government has incentives for investments in food security. Maybe if any of our colleagues from New Zealand might take this question, if they have any information.
Perhaps I could take it.
Happy to.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah. The short answer is no, really, no. There is our government has in place a lot of things that are dealing with some of the things that are important for our global markets, including being responsible for our water quality, being responsible for our animal welfare, being responsible for our climate change commitments. But yeah, I think the simple answer to your question though is no. Catherine.
Yeah, that's right. I think really they believe that markets can deliver good food security. So if you give businesses a predictable regulatory environment and let them get on with it, then investment flows to where it gets its best reward. And actually, we saw through COVID that the food security was pretty fantastic. So yeah, no kind of subsidies. The government does invest a lot, I guess, in research and development, though. If you look at that slide I put up about the investment from the government and through the university system, that all contributes to food security, but also well-functioning markets.
Thank you very much, Catherine and Dave, for the information and reply. I think we don't have any more questions from the audience, and I think this also wraps up our very informative webinar. And just like last year, it looks like we will have these online-based webinars as countries in the world get into the vaccinations. and food security is now a very key concern, not only for governments, for companies and consumers as well. And today we had a good chance to hear from our colleagues and friends from Turkey and New Zealand about the best practices and about the areas of cooperation that we can have in the future. And also as the Turkish New Zealand Business Council, we had a good start for 2021 with this webinar. I want to thank you to all of you for participating and in the event with your presentations and speeches. And we look forward to having similar events like this at DEİK in order to promote New Zealand and Turkey to each other so that we can accelerate the investments and the foreign trade volume between two countries. Thank you very much again, everybody, and good evening to our friends in New Zealand, and cheers for now.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.